welcome to section 10.5, multiplying and dividing radical expressions. Hopefully by the end of this, you will be able to multiply and divide radical expressions. So, how do you multiply radical expressions? Let's start there. First thing you'll do is just distribute like you normally would when there's more than one term being multiplied, okay? When you multiply radicals, what you're going to do is you're going to multiply the coefficients together, that's the number outside, and then multiply the radicands together, that's the thing on the inside, okay? The index or the type of the radical stays the same. So it's outside times outside, inside times inside. Then what you'll do is you'll simplify the radical if you can, and then you'll add or subtract like terms if you can. So let's try a few of these. So my first example, in example 1a, has 2 plus the square root of 3 times 1 plus the square root of 5. So we're going to distribute just like normal. I'm going to do this first term, the 2, and then I'm going to multiply it by both terms in the second parenthesis. I'm going to do 2 times 1, which is 2, plus, I'm going to do 2 times square root of 5. When you do 2 times the square root of 5, you're like, well, this one doesn't have a radical. I know, it's just a coefficient. Okay, so we're going to multiply coefficient times coefficient. 2 times 1 would be 2. And then, not a radical, times square root of 5 would just be 2 square root of 5. Okay? The next thing I'm going to do is take the second term, the square root of 3, and multiply it by both terms in the second parenthesis. I'm going to do square root of 3 times 1, which would just be square root of 3. I'm going to do square root of 3 times the square root of 5. So I'll multiply the outside times the outside. 1 times 1 would be 1. And then I'll do inside times inside. 3 times 5 is 15. The 15, that breaks down into 5 times 3. There's no pairs of 2, which means I can't simplify that any further. There are no like radicals. This is a square root of 5, and that's a square root of 3, and that's a square root of 15. So none of those are the same, so we cannot combine any like terms. So this is our answer. Okay, let's try another one. We've got 4 plus the cube root of 7 times 4 minus the cube root of 7. Okay, I'm going to distribute again, so I'm going to do 4 times both terms in the second parenthesis. I'm going to do 4 times 4, which is 16. I'm going to do 4 times the negative cube root of 7, so a positive times a negative will be a negative 4 cube root of 7. Then I'm going to do this cube root of 7 times both terms. So the cube root of 7 times 4 will be a positive 4 cube root of 7. And then the positive cube root of 7 times the negative cube root of 7, well, I'm going to do outside times outside. So 1 times negative 1 will be a negative 1. And there's kind of an assumed 1 there. If you want to put a 1, if it makes you happy, you can. But there's an assumed 1 there. And then inside times inside, 7 times 7 would be 49. 49 breaks down to 7 times 7. So since it's a cube root, I need 3 7s to make a group, and I only have 2, so not enough. So that does not simplify at all. Let's see, do we have any like terms? We do right here in the middle. We have a positive 4 cube root of 7 and a negative 4 cube root of 7. So that negative 4 plus the positive 4, that'll give us 0 cube root of 7, so that'll just be 0. Those will cancel out pretty nicely. And what we'll have then is 16 minus the cube root of 49. Okay. All right, last one we're going to do for example 1 is the square root of 13 minus 2, and we're going to square that, okay? Keep in mind, when you square a parenthesis, that means it's the whole parenthesis times itself. So we're going to expand that out as square root of 13 minus 2 times the square root of 13 minus 2. You can't just like square each individual part because that wouldn't be the complete answer. That's not all of the multiplying that you need to do. We need to actually distribute. So when I distribute, I'm going to do the square root of 13 times both terms. I'm going to do the square root of 13 times the square root of 13, which would be the square root of 169. I'm going to do the square root of 13 times a negative 2, which would be negative 2 square root of 13. Again, that 2 is like a coefficient. We'll multiply it times the 1 on the outside here. So negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. And then this has kind of a 1 for its radical part. Times that square root of 13 is the square root of 13. Okay? Next up, we'll do this negative 2 times both terms. Negative 2 times square root of 13 is another negative 2 square root of 13. And negative 2 times negative 2 will be positive 4. Alrighty. Let's see if we can simplify some radicals. 169, we know that breaks down into 13 times 13. We'd have a pair of 2, we can bring that out. So the square root of 169 is 13. Everything else stays the same. We can't really simplify the square root of 13 because it's prime. Okay? Next up, let's combine some like terms. We've got 13 plus 4, which would be 17. And we've got this negative 2 square root of 13 minus 2 square root of 13. So those both have square roots, and they're both the square root of 13, so they are like terms. Negative 2 minus 2 would be negative 4, and the radical would stay the same. It would still be the square root of 13. So there's our complete answer for number 1. Now it's your turn. You get to try one and show me how much you've learned.